Hey guys! Part 3 of What If Naruto Awakens Sage Mode at a Young Age. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 7 Unmasked? The mask I wear on my face means a lot more than my codename, and keeping my identity a secret. I am a monster, and it is important that I stay one. But there are times when I can't afford to be anything but a regular human. As Nezumi, with the mask on, I am capable of being that human, that person. The mask keeps the monster at bay. As Naruto, without the mask, I am a warrior of God, a monster who enjoys taking the lives of demons. What am I to do now? The mask is gone, taken from me by a wolf in sheep's clothing. The monster is all that remains now. And that frightens me. Sarutobi Hiruzen stood at the top of the Hokage Tower, letting the breeze wash over him in the dimming sunlight. It was nearing dinner time, he thought. It was a calm day in Konoha. There were clouds above with the sunlight peeking just behind. It was quiet and peaceful, a rare thing these days. He was relaxing, waiting for the captain of Team Ro to meet him, going through all the new things that had happened in the past 4 years. After they had returned to Konoha, Rohan had gone through a lot. His shadow lost his best friend, the young Uchiha, becoming a missing nin for the sake of his village, but only a handful knew of his task. His shadow had known, being there to witness both the meeting between the Hokage and the village elders with Itachi and the horrible massacre itself. The order to take the lives of his fellow clan members was not given by Hiruzen, but by his old friend, Danzo. That had caused the Hokage to strip the War Hawk of his title of second in command. He hadn't known, but he had become number 1 on Nezumi's shit list. He had taken his friend away, and he would not go unpunished. But that would come later, and with the help of a certain Uchiha survivor. The Uzumaki would give his friend's brother exactly what he wanted when the time came, and the Hokage knew it. It wouldn't happen until the young Uchiha was ready, though. No one but Hiruzen knew that the blonde had spoken to Itachi before and then after the deed was done, and the promise he had sworn to his first friend. As long as he was breathing, Uchiha Sasuke would be safe. When the Kamikage said something, it would be done. That was another new thing. Kamikage, God's Shadow, had become Nezumi's official moniker. People who followed him, which was practically any Anbu or Jonin, by this point, who heard stories of his triumphs, knew of his other name, the bringer of hope, the hero of Mizu no Kuni. The young blonde had become the most famous shinobi in Hai no Kuni, and no one even knew who he was. After one of the lower-ranked Anbu teams heard the Hokage talk about his shadow, they had spread the word about the Kamikage actually existing. It became such a big spectacle that Hiruzen had to confirm that the operative Nezumi, Konoha's Kamikage, was in fact real or risk a riot. It was absurd. Soon after the Uchiha massacre, Inu had left the Anbu Corps to become a full-fledged Jonin, which was not his choice. Nezumi had been sad but had greater things to worry about, like leading Team Ro. Sarutobi had named Nezumi the official successor of Inu as the captain of Rohan. He had many responsibilities, so he had little time to miss his senpai. After the confirmation of his existence, Nezumi was known not only as the youngest Anbu operative ever, but also the youngest captain ever. He was the new poster boy of Konoha, except no one knew who he was or what he looked like. Somehow, word of him being blonde surfaced. He suspected Saru was the traitor, and many people thought that meant he was a Yamanaka. Which he wasn't, he was an Uzumaki, and what he now knew, a Namikaze. Hiruzen and Jiraiya had told him of his heritage a week after he returned from Kuri, right after he mentioned he felt like the Lord Fourth when he set Mizu no Kuni free. The old teacher and student were a little nervous how he would react, and were extremely relieved when he understood, and felt nothing but happiness at the news. He had looked up to the man his whole life. To learn that he was his son was the best thing to ever happen to him. He was even excited to learn that his mother was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi before him. He had something in common with her as well. He had worn a smile under his mask the entire month after that, the Uchiha massacre the only thing that would cause him to lose it. He was sad that all of the Uchiha, his fellow Konoha shinobi, were gone, but he was more depressed about losing his best friend. When he was titled a traitor and missing Nin, Nezumi had almost killed Danzo early. The things he heard people say about Itachi made him furious, and when he became the captain of Team Ro, he had banned any bad words about the Uchiha. During the time before the massacre, Nezumi had felt the disgruntled minds of the Uchiha. They had felt ostracized by the rest of Konoha, and they had finally had enough of it. The Hokage wanted to find a peaceful solution with the clan that co-founded the village, but after several reports from Itachi and Nezumi, he knew that Danzo and the elders were right. Extreme action was required. The Hokage had decided that Nezumi would carry out orders to only kill the Uchiha who wanted the coup to proceed, and spare the ones who were against it. Afterwards, the Hokage would work with Mikoto and Itachi to fix the relationship between the clan and Konoha. It would have worked too, if Danzo hadn't acted on his own accord. Now, Itachi was a missing Nin and the entire Uchiha clan was gone. Nezumi had lost his first friend. With the loss of one friend, he had gained another who he was much closer to. Nico had stayed with Nezumi in Team Ro, and the two were like siblings now. Nico, who he now knew to be Yuzuki Yugao, was the only person alive who was brave enough to stand up against the Kamikage. She was just like an older sister. She was strict with him when the time called for it, like with women, and gentle with him when he needed it, like with Itachi. She was his closest friend, even more so than Itachi was, and he loved her like she loved him. He had even met her boyfriend, Gekko Hate, who was a nice guy. He had a strange cough that he never seemed to get rid of though. It was weird for Nezumi to speak with someone outside of ANBU, but Hokage Gigi had allowed it, and Nico really liked spending what she called time with her boys now, so he had no choice. When Yugaone said something, it was done. Hiruzen was happy that Nezumi had found someone he could depend on and talk about non-ANBU related things, like his feelings, which he could not talk about to any man. Nico had kept all of his personal feelings a secret, like he did with hers. It was strange, a 15-year-old was best friends with a 22-year-old. Oh well, the boy was never ordinary in the first place. The Uzumaki had kept his perfect completed missions record even still, after 8 years of being in the Black Ops. It was amazing, and never done before. Everyone had a few failed missions, it was close to impossible not to, but Nezumi had always said his hobby was making the impossible possible. The Sandaime had always thought that his shadow was beyond powerful, but the things he was accomplishing nowadays was awe-inspiring. He had left every other shinobi in the realm of mortals and ascended to something different, something more. Even with all of the power brimming inside him, he still spoke of gaining more. The things he had hypothesized he could do with a little practice were godlike. It made Hiruzen and his student nervous that the blonde would turn out to be like Orochimaru, craving power and willing to do anything for it. They were relieved when Nezumi had felt their nervous thoughts, explaining that he only wanted to gain more power to protect his nation, nothing more, and he'd never sink as low as the traitorous scum. The Hokage had his eyes on the Hokage monument, admiring the view. He really missed his teachers, and wished that Minato could have seen what his child became, a true patriot. It was a shame that none of the previous Hokage could meet his shadow. They would have loved to meet such a powerful and loyal Konohanin. He chuckled a bit. His shadow outshined him. That wasn't very shadow-like. It didn't matter though, the boy was definitely becoming Hokage soon, and when he did, he would change the village for the better. Even more, he would change the world. Hiruzen knew it, could feel it in his old bones. It was strange. His shadow was running a little late. That was not like him at all. As soon as he had thought that, the blonde-haired Nezumi flickered into existence behind him, kneeling and bowing his head to his leader, as was protocol for all ANBU. Nezumi, you're late. Hiruzen decided to tease him a bit. I was hoping Kakashi-kun wouldn't rub off on you. He pushed down the need to chuckle. It is a very bad habit. Like every other time when someone tried to tease him, the blonde saw it coming miles away with his abilities. I think you're a little early, Gigi, Nezumi replied, standing from his kneeling position. You may have forgotten the correct time you wanted to see me. He continued. Old age seems to be catching up to you. He finished with a satisfied smirk under his mask. He was top dog when it came to pranks. Careful, Nezumi, you're awfully close to insubordination. Hiruzen joked back. He may not be the greatest, but he had learned a thing or two while playing these games with his surrogate grandson. Yes, Hokage-sama, the blonde intoned. He had been out of the village for a month with the last mission and hadn't seen his Gigi, or Neichan, the entire time. He missed them and was happy to be back for a while. He didn't know what was about to come, though. The Lord Third cleared his throat before he spoke. I have called you here to give you your next orders, but before I do, have a look at this. Nezumi accepted the little black book his Gigi handed him, recognizing it as a bingo book. You weren't considered a dangerous shinobi unless you had a bounty on your head in one of these little books. Page 33. He added. Nezumi turned to the correct page and read. Name, Nezumi, Kamikage, Bringer of Hope. Flee on sight. Affiliation, Konohagakure no Sado. Clan unknown. Family unknown. Age, thought to be between the ages of 15 and 16. Height, 170.2 centimeters. Hair color blonde. Rank SS class. Classification Sage Censor, Jinchuriki, Kyubi no Kitsune. Notes: first shinobi to gain the SS class rank since Namikaze Minato, the fourth Hokage. More data required. Recommendation for approach, not applicable. Bounty, none has yet to be posted. If Nezumi wasn't so upset about someone having enough information on him to put him in the bingo book, he would have found his first entry into the big leagues amusing. Apparently he was the boogeyman. And the fact he had a flee on sight order attached to him outside of wartime confused him. This has too much information for it to be an outside source, Nezumi said a little bitterly. That meant they had someone inside Konoha who had high enough clearance to have all that knowledge, giving the other nations the confidential information. My thoughts exactly, Hiruzen replied. It was much too detailed not to originate from the inside. There was even a picture of him, with his mask on of course, and it was the very same picture he had for his top secret profile. There was a traitor amongst his forces. I understand, Hokage-sama, Nezumi said, Hiruzen not even having to say what was on his mind. Take your mask off, Nezumi, the Lord Third ordered in a hard tone. The blonde complied immediately. He knew this was necessary. His identity was compromised, even if it was only Konoha who knew it. The village knew that the child Uzumaki Naruto was the Jinchuriki of the Kyubi, and if they had a mole, it wouldn't take very long for other nations to know as well. Sarutobi took the ANBU mask. As of this moment, you are no longer a member of the ANBU. The blonde nodded. Uzumaki Naruto, you are now an official jonin of Konoha. Report to my office first thing in the morning. Naruto nodded, and then frowned in thought. Hokage-sama, what about my living arrangements? It saddened Naruto that he had to leave the Black Ops so suddenly, but he could think about that later. Right now he had more important things to get done, like finding a place to live. He felt her before his Gigi said anything. I'm sure you'll figure it out, the god of shinobi said with a smirk. I'll see you tomorrow, Naruto-kun. He finished, and then Shun's body flickered away, done with what he needed to do. Yugao was in her civilian clothes, denoting her off-duty status. Neichan. Naruto greeted his sister figure. It's good to see you, he said happily, giving the moonflower a smile he reserved for her. He could act his age a little when in her presence, and now that he was no longer an operative, he could act any way he wanted. All jonin were a little strange, each having something that helped them cope with the job, so he thought he might as well act a little more himself and he'd fit right in. I heard you were looking for a place to stay, Yugao said with a smile of her own. She hugged him before saying, Haikun said you can stay at our place. You were supposed to live only in the Black Ops HQ, but Yugao stayed in her boyfriend's apartment when she was off duty, and finally moved all of her personal things there. It was now Hate and Yugao's apartment, and apparently Naruto was going to live there now too. He didn't mind it though. He loved Yugao, and he had become good friends with Hate. Sounds good, Naruto said as he hugged his Neichan back. She was one of the only people he could just be himself with. She knew all of his secrets and feelings, and he trusted her with his whole being. I need to get my things from HQ, he said. All of his stuff, what little he had, was still in the Black Ops building. Yugao shook her head. Already done, little brother, she said while leading him off somewhere. All of your personal belongings are at our place. She smiled. I had Sara help me. Naruto sighed in exasperation. Yugao had made Sara her personal slave when he lost the bet the two had made a year ago. The monkey-faced Nara should have learned that there was nothing Naruto couldn't do. For someone like him, training the daimyo's wife's demon cat Tora was a walk in the park. That damn Hellcat didn't stand a chance against the Kamikage. Of course you did. Naruto laughed. By the way, he started, looking around him in confusion. Where are we going? First, we're going home so you can change your clothes. There was her motherly feelings again. Yugao and Naruto had a brother-sister relationship, but there were times when Naruto thought Yugao felt more like a mother than anything. When she was like that, Naruto had no chance in winning an argument with the woman. Right now was one of those times. Then we're going to have some lunch with some of my friends. I can finally introduce you to everyone. She finished with a smile. Naruto smiled at his best friend. Sounds fun, he said. He didn't really care what they were doing. As long as he could spend some time with his sister, then he was fine. It would be weird to do it in public, though. He didn't have too much experience with this kind of thing. He really hoped her friends didn't dislike him. Not many adults liked hanging around with people his age, so he was nervous. It was ridiculous. He had completed more S-rank missions than all of the past Hokage combined, and yet he was afraid of what a couple of women thought about him. It wasn't what they thought personally. He just hoped that his sister's friends didn't mind being around him. He decided to suck it up and just be himself. There was nothing the Kamikage couldn't do. Inside the restaurant Shushuya, Inuzuka Hana, Yuhi Kurenai, and Mitarashi Anko sat at a single table waiting for Yuzuki Yugao. The A&B woman was off duty for a few days, so they had planned to have lunch today. Their purple-haired friend had said she had someone to introduce to them, something about them finally meeting her little brother, which was weird because they thought she had no family left. Hana had already started eating her meal, not wanting to wait for Yugao. People who had met Hana thought that she was the opposite of her clan's wild reputation, but when you got to know her, the woman was exactly like her scary mother. The Chunin had been a little upset with herself. Yugao was an ANBU agent, Anko had been promoted to Jonin 2 years ago after her curse mark was removed, and Kurenai had just recently got her Jonin rank as well. Hana had gone straight into the veterinarian business right after she acquired her Chunin status, and hadn't taken on any high-risk missions that would warrant a promotion. She loved her job, she really did, but when all of her friends were higher ranked than her, it was kind of annoying. Where is she? Anko asked, getting a little impatient. They had been there for a good half an hour. It was very unlike Yugao to be late. I don't know. Just order already, she won't be upset, Hana replied. Don't talk with your mouth full, Hana-chan, Kurenai scolded. You act just like your dogs sometimes, I swear, she added, getting a chuckle from Anko. Hana growled at her friend and frowned. She opened her mouth to defend herself but was cut off by their late friend. Sorry we're late, guys, they heard Yugao say from behind them. When they turned around to greet the purple-haired woman, they frowned. Where's this so-called brother of yours, little Miss Late? Anko asked. When they got a look at the woman, she was alone. We thought you were going to introduce us to some cute little kid. So, where is he? Yugao chuckled. Anko was always a little impatient. He's outside, Yugao began. He ran into someone he knew before we came in. He'll be here in a second, she said while taking a seat next to Hana. So how's everyone been? Kurenai was the first to speak. I've been chosen to lead a Genin team when the next batch graduates. The young woman had a happy smirk on her face. She had taken the Jonin exam in the first place to become a Jonin sensei. She had wanted to pass on what her father and sensei had taught her when she was a Genin. It had been her dream since she was a kid. When will that be? Yugao asked with genuine curiosity. She knew her red-eyed friend wanted to be a Jonin sensei more than anything, and was happy that she was finally about to accomplish her life's dream. They graduate in 2 days, and then our teams are assigned to us the day after. Kurenai answered. We get to know who's assigned to us tomorrow so we can prepare the final Genin tests. She added. After the Genin graduation test at the academy, the Jonin sensei of every squad would test the effectiveness of the team. If the sensei thought that the team wouldn't work well together, then the Genin would be sent back to the academy and placed into different teams. That was the usual way to do things, at least, unless you were a certain silver-haired shinobi. His methods were a bit harsher, but he was one of the greatest ninja under the Lord Third, so he could get away with more than most. That's wonderful, Kurenai. I'm glad you finally reached your dream. Yugao congratulated the new Jonin. A lot of people had doubted that the Kunoichi could become a Jonin because she was a genjutsu specialist. While they were important to the village, when it came to shinobi battles they weren't the first people to be picked, unless they were Uchiha. But the woman had proved them wrong and became an exceptionally powerful genjutsu mistress of Konoha. Thank you, Kurenai replied with a smile. She was in such a good mood that nothing could bring her down. Not only was she about to start her dream career, but she could do it side by side with her boyfriend. What about you, Anko? Has the Hokage decided to assign a few kiddies to you? Yugao asked. Anko had been a Jonin for 2 years and she had yet to be asked to be a Jonin sensei. Not every Jonin became a sensei, but Anko was an extremely talented young woman who had many specialized jutsu that would benefit the village if she shared them. Anko scowled. No was all she said. Hana decided to elaborate. Hokage-sama still thinks giving Anko-chan a Genin team would be disastrous. This time it was Anko who growled at the big-mouthed Inuzuka. When Anko had made Jonin, she had asked if she was going to teach Genin. When the Hokage all but laughed at her and thoroughly dismissed her genuine question, she was more than a little bitter. Sure, she might be a little unconventional, but she didn't think that made her an unqualified sensei. Before Anko had the chance to defend herself, they were greeted by a young male voice. Sorry about that, the voice said. It's been a long time since I've seen Usagi. It's okay. Yugao waved at the blonde that came up to their table. Sit down, Naruto-kun. I want to introduce you to everyone. Naruto nodded and sat with a smile. Naruto, this is Yuhi Kurenai, Inuzuka Hana, and Mitarashi Anko. The Moonflower pointed to each of the Kunoichi as she spoke. Girls, this is my little brother, Uzumaki Naruto. For a good minute the 3 women stared at the blonde with wide eyes. Word that the Kamikage, the bringer of hope, was the village pariah, Uzumaki Naruto, had already cycled. For the 3 women, no, for the entire county, God's Shadow was the biggest celebrity to have come from Hai no Kuni. He was even more famous than the daimyo, who told the Hokage what to do when he wanted. Konohagakure no Sato belonged to him after all. It shocked them into silence when he just sat with them like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. Anko was the first to recover. Oh, you knew him the whole time? She yelled. Anko was pissed. Flashback. What do you mean specialist? We're the specialists. Mitarashi Anko yelled indignantly at the man who took her under his wing when she joined the TNI division. Marino Ibiki sighed. His apprentice could be so childish sometimes. The prisoner is too high profile for us to use our methods. We can't hurt him, Hokage-sama's orders. He answered. Then why not have Inoichi mind walk his ass? That way we don't have to rely on an outsider. If we let him take our catch, we'll look incompetent. The snake mistress tried to reason. She didn't like the idea of needing someone else's help to obtain information. They were the best at what they did after all. No one could get information as efficient as they could. We have orders, Anko. Just let it go, they'll be here any minute now. Anko huffed but did as she was told. She was so upset because it was her direct involvement that helped capture the IWA Nin, and now she was being told that she wasn't allowed to touch him. It was vexatious. The man was a golem captain of Iwagakure, and was thought to be responsible for the deaths of 3 Konoha Chunin. It was unfortunately common for this kind of thing to happen during peacetime. Even though there was a treaty between 2 nations, one or both would always try to attain information on the other. When an operative was caught, however, it was custom to send them back to their village of origin, a little roughed up but alive nonetheless. This particular IWA Golem captain thought that there would be no consequences in killing Konoha when they were caught spying on their neighbors, which was not the case at all. He was about to see the flaw in his foolishness. No one took the lives of the god of Shinobi's men for no reason and got away with it. After Anko went silent, it didn't take long for the Hokage to show up in the company of only 3 ANBU. The sight of the ANBU present stilled her tongue. She had planned on complaining to the Lord Third, until she saw who was accompanying him. She had noticed Yugao, already knowing that Nico was one of her best friends. She even knew Sara, the second ANBU to walk into their interrogation room. The obvious Nara had been close with Nico since they became teammates, and Anko had seen him on more than a few occasions. What surprised her to her very core was the smallest of the ANBU, trailing directly behind and to the right of the Hokage. The hair matched his description, and the mouse mask was a dead giveaway. She was in the presence of the Kamikage, the bringer of hope. Ever since the announcement that the powerful boy was actually real, everyone, including Anko, had wanted to meet him. He was the most famous, or infamous, depending how you looked at it, shinobi Hai no Kuni had produced. Ever. The fact that someone as young as the Lord Third Hokage's shadow had become a member of the man's personal ANBU before even becoming an actual ninja was awe-inspiring. He was everyone's hero, even if they didn't know that the boy was a monster. Ibiki immediately bowed his head in respect to his leader, Anko, following soon after she recovered from the shock of actually seeing the greatest prodigy Konoha, hell, the entire elemental nations had ever produced. The IWA Golem captain, unharmed and awaiting your interrogation, as ordered, Hokage-sama. The scarred man said plainly. He made no mistake, he was in the presence of gods among men. He did what he was told, and only spoke when it was necessary. He had no fear towards the powerful warriors, he just gave them the respect they deserved. The both of them, the Lord Third and Kamikage, had done more for the village than any other shinobi, which was ridiculous considering that the bringer of hope was thought to be only 13. The Hokage nodded, always appreciative of how professional Ibiki was on the job. He gave his shadow a glance over his shoulder, receiving a slight nod that was missed by everyone besides Anko, who was watching the young blonde ANBU operative like a hawk. Hiruzen began. Did you kill 3 of my Chunin? The bald, brawny man said nothing, but with the Kamikage present, he didn't need to. Yes. Hiruzen continued. Did IWA approve of the methods you used against my shinobi? Again, nothing but silence was given to the Hokage. No. Hiruzen carried on. Did you know that they were not spying on your village? Yes. Feeling the small bursts of chakra that only he and his shadow could decipher, he asked one last question. Why did you do it? Anko had heard the stories like everyone else. The bringer of hope, a child of Konoha who was the Hokage's personal angel of death. He would smite Konoha's enemies, raze their strongholds to the ground, and did it with a smile on his face, all for the sake of his village. People had said that he wasn't human, a bringer of carnage, not hope, but the woman had never paid much attention to them. After word reached Hai no Kuni of his actions in Nizu no Kuni, he was seen as both death incarnate and a savior. The snake mistress had no idea what she was witnessing at the moment. The Hokage would ask a question, receive no answer, and then move on to the next. That's why, when Izumi had felt the man's reply, and acted rather violently, she was confused. It was fun. The man thought it was fun to watch the life leave the blonde's comrades. They were fresh Chunin, they didn't stand a chance against someone like him. That caused him to let himself become the monster he was. In the blink of an eye, Nezumi had taken his tanto into his hand and drove it into the IWA Nin's neck, lowering his head so he could make sure that the dying man could see his gold eyes stare at him through his eye slits. For a moment, he just held the man's gaze, not flinching in the slightest when he coughed blood onto his white masked face. Both Anko and Ibiki were thoroughly confused and terrified at the blonde's next words. You're right, he said casually. It is fun. When he finished his words, he pulled his blade from the man's throat, swiped it in the air once to rid it of the blood staining it, and then sheathed it. The Hokage or the other Anbu made no move to berate him for his actions, or show any sign that they disliked what he did at all. For a moment, Anko just stood there, a little shocked at the boy's complete lack in regard of taking a life so brutally. Everyone knew that he hadn't died right away. He was stabbed just so that he suffered through it for a few seconds. He had just killed an unarmed and helpless prisoner with an ease that brought chills to the Kunoichi's back. They had no way of knowing that that was the whole point. The 3 Chunin the man had killed were helpless against him, unable to stand a chance. They lost their lives just as helpless as he. An eye for an eye was not always the best policy, but it seemed to be appropriate in this particular situation. Usually, Anbu were supposed to kill themselves upon capture, but thanks to Anko's quick thinking they had subdued the man perfectly. He was unconscious and had 2 chakra suppression seals on him before he even knew that he was being attacked. In her mind, she had a hand in ending the man's life so horribly. That was not the end of her first encounter with a true monster. What came next would change her life forever. The Nezumi masked boy turned to the special Jonin, looking her over. She involuntarily gulped in fear that she had somehow offended him in some way. She didn't think he would hurt a fellow loyal Konohanin, but she remembered that a few people still didn't trust her for being a traitor's student, and was praying that he was not one of them. "Is this the Kunoichi you spoke of, Nico?" he asked, getting an affirmative from his purple-haired teammate. "Yes, sir. She's the one with the curse mark." Nezumi was not pleased that one of his comrades was forced to live in pain and constant reminder of her previous sensei's sins. When Nico had explained the snake woman's problem, he had been more than willing to see if he could help. When it came to seals, like a curse mark, Nezumi was an amazing person to know. He was by no means a Fuinjutsu specialist, but he had the capability of removing them. It was actually quite simple for the blonde. With his ability to transfer chakra, he had the opposite of the ability as well. That was something the Uzumaki had learned early in his shinobi career. With every one of his talents, there was a positive and negative way of using it. Not negative as in it harmed him in some way, but as in an opposite, or inverted way of using it. Seals were powered by the user's chakra. If you took that chakra away, the seal would no longer be able to stabilize itself. It took someone with both incredible precision and the actual ability to extract the chakra for this method to work, and fortunately for Anko, Nezumi had both. "Midarashi Anko," the Hokage began. "Kneel before your leader," he demanded. Anko was a little surprised but complied nonetheless. The Hokage had spoken, and she could do nothing but obey. She felt it before she heard it. Her tan trench coat was pulled to the side by small hands, followed by the mesh armor around her shoulder. She flinched at the blonde's straightforwardness. She had no idea what he was doing, but decided to trust her fellow shinobi and Hokage. Nezumi gave a genuine small smile under his mask. He could help this girl. The boy laid his right hand on the woman's shoulder, right above the bane of her existence. He looked to his leader for permission, never doing anything without it. Receiving a nod from the aging man, he began the process of changing someone's life. It was time to free her from the traitorous bastard for good. He shut his eyes in concentration, feeling for the exact amount of foreign influence he needed to extract from the girl. If he pulled recklessly, he could harm the Kunoichi, which was something he did not want to do. He focused his breathing, sending minuscule bursts of his own chakra into her to act like radar. While this method could be used for the extraction of chakra, it also had another purpose. He could feel the emotions of everyone around him already, but like this he could feel the single person entirely. Their likes, dislikes, wants, needs, everything. He had only done this with the Hokage, the man wanting him to be able to understand the way he lead the village. Now, with Anko, he had felt something that he had long since lost the need to feel. There, Nezumi had found the foreign pieces that needed to be eliminated. Taking his hand from the woman's neck, he ripped the disgusting chakra from her. With his hand, a substance that looked similar to his sage dust, only it was a sinister purple instead of majestic gold, came with it. Even under her mask, Nezumi could feel Nico's eyes widen, as well as Saru's. For the Hokage, the opposite was happening. The Lord Third narrowed his eyes, already noticing the shape the repugnant chakra was taking. Orochimaru. A transparent, sickly Orochimaru was now being held by the neck with the Kamiki's hand. Nezumi had guessed that the thing was a piece of the man's soul, secured in the curse mark in the case of his death. All it would take was for one of his followers to resurrect the man from the seal. By the look of the thing, Orochimaru was still, unfortunately, alive. The ghostly form of Orochimaru could do nothing but groan out unintelligently within the firm grasp of the bringer of hope. Nezumi brought the soul shard to eye level before pumping the thing full of his own natural energy. The sinister purple was being swallowed up by noble gold at an astonishing rate. The groans became screams of agony, announcing its end. With one last wave of pure natural energy, the piece of Orochimaru's soul that was held within Enko for safekeeping was destroyed, shattering like glass. With the display of light signaled the end to the Kunoichi's suffering. The curse mark was gone. The extraction was painful and exhausting for Enko, and as a result she was close to losing consciousness. Before she could leave, though, Nezumi had one last thing to do. He bent down so that he could speak and only the woman would hear him. That's when he whispered something he used to wish someone, anyone, would tell him. "There," he began, "I've saved you." And with that, Enko lost consciousness, taking with her the words she'd been waiting to hear for years. She had met her knight in shining armor. End flashback. After Enko had her curse mark removed, she had begged and pleaded to meet Nezumi again. Both the Hokage and Yugao had refused to say anything, though. The Hokage straight out told her that it wasn't going to happen. Nezumi was a secret operative, and hadn't the time to waste with any more girls. It was apparently a problem with the blonde ANBU agent. The female species seemed to be attracted to him like bees to honey. Yugao had said that she didn't really know her superior all that much, stating that Rohan was a big team, and she was usually in charge of an entire sub-cell herself. She also said that her captain didn't need another older woman to throw herself at him. Enko didn't know what they had thought she was going to do to the kid. It wasn't like she had decided to fuck his brains out or anything, she just wanted to properly thank him for what he had done for her. He had set her free, and brought her hope and happiness. So when Yugao came in with her very hero, saying that he was her little brother, she was a little ticked off. "I thought you said you two weren't close," she yelled, getting weird looks from the other customers. "I had to say that, Enko-chan," Yugao said calmly. "Hokage-sama ordered me to." "You could have hinted at me or something," Enko shouted. "I thought we were friends." Yugao's eyes widened a little after that was said. She knew that her friend really wanted to meet her kid brother, but she honestly didn't think that it was this important to her. She was actually really upset with her. Before Yugao could say anything else, Enko grabbed Naruto by the wrist and dragged him out of Shashuya's, a surprised look on his face. "Come on, we need to talk," she yelled as she pulled him away from the others. Naruto sighed. This was going to be a little awkward, and he just got back from a long and taxing mission. All he wanted to do was sit down and share a meal with his Nei-chan. But with all of the emotions he could feel coming from the Kunoichi, he knew that wasn't going to be happening anytime soon. Chapter 8, Jonin Test. The people of my village have only ever heard of the Bringer of Hope being some kind of valiant hero who does the right thing in every situation. They couldn't be more wrong. I'm a monster, a soldier of a god. The peace and justice I fight for are all for the sake of my commander. I am the sword of God, and the shield of heaven. I only do what is expected from me. That was how it used to be, at least. Now I am a part of the whole. I have no mask to aid me, to distinguish me from the others. What you see is what you get. My fellow shinobi will never accept me as one of them unless they are shown what I am capable of firsthand. It's going to be something they never forget. This I promise to you. Somehow, for reasons unknown to her, Enko had taken Naruto to her shared apartment with Kurenai. She didn't know why they ended up here. She had wanted to speak to the boy in private, and she guessed her subconscious mind thought that that place was her room. She was still upset with Yugao for keeping her away from him, but decided to think about that later, after she spoke with the person responsible for her freedom. Now, in her room with the Bringer of Hope, she was uncharacteristically nervous. Enko was usually a brash and brave woman, unaffected by what people thought of her, in their presence at least, and couldn't understand why the blonde made her feel so shy. It could be because of his legendary hero status among most of the world, but that thought hadn't crossed her mind yet. She felt like a peasant staring in awe at a giant. So here they were, the snake mistress and Kamikage, alone, in her room. Alone. "I'm Madarashi Anko," she blurted out suddenly. Then she face-palmed. He already knew who she was. "But you already knew that," she said somewhat sheepishly. "So your name is Uzumaki Naruto, right?" She repeated the name that Yugao had introduced him as. God, why was she being so shy? This was not like her at all. She hated feeling this way. Naruto tried to give her a reassuring smile. "Yes, Anko-san." It was a little weird being in the woman's bedroom alone with her. He could feel her nervousness and her embarrassment. She had closed the door when she walked in on habit, and was regretting it now. She didn't want him to think she brought him here to sleep with him. "Just Anko is fine," she informed him. She was never big with honorifics and the sort. "I brought you here to," she started speaking softer and softer, "thank you for what you did." She finished in a very hushed tone. It was hard for Anko to thank anyone, even her superiors. She wasn't a very emotional or clingy girl, so thank yous and apologies were very rare from the kunoichi. Naruto, however, seemed to be the exception. And he was. The blonde had taken away the thing that she looked at first thing in the morning and last thing at night. The curse mark was exactly that, her curse. It disgusted her every time she looked at it, and only checked all the time to see if it miraculously disappeared. It never did. Not until she met the Kamikage, that is. With one encounter with the famed shinobi, he had changed her life for the better. He was like no one she had ever met before, and she had only met him once. "It's not a problem, Anko." He stopped himself from adding the san suffix to her name like she asked. "If it's for my fellow Konohanin, I'd do anything to help." His smile was absolutely beautiful. Anko was a little taken aback by the way the blonde was talking. What she had witnessed 2 years ago was a stark contrast to the cheery boy standing in her room. The boy was amazing and incredibly terrifying when he wanted to be, so to see him act so friendly was a little strange for her. "Well, whatever the case may be, thank you," she replied. "You have no idea how much it means to me," she added. Naruto smirked. He knew exactly how she felt, just as much as she did. He had synced with her all those years ago, so he knew the women better than any of her longtime friends did. He wasn't going to tell her that though. Most people found his ability to perfectly understand them somewhat creepy. They felt like he was invading their personal privacy, which, in a sense, he was. He never used their feelings against them though, and never brought them up. Ever. Still, even some of the people on his team found it a little weird, and at times, annoying. They could never get anything past him. "You're welcome," he finally said. He didn't really see it as something he needed to be thanked for though. It was a simple procedure. Yeah, he might be the only person alive who could do it with such ease, but it was still simple nonetheless, to him at least. But for the kunoichi's sake, he accepted the compliment. He knew how hard it was for the woman to thank people, and it showed how much it meant to her when she did. "Is that the only thing you needed, Anko?" he asked. They were still just standing in her room. Anko bit her lip and thought. She did want to ask him something else but didn't know if it was alright or not. After all, he was an ANBU agent at the time, so it might be confidential, but she wanted to know anyways. She needed to know why he did it. "When we first met, why did you kill that IWA golem the way you did?" To her, the Kamikage was a hero, a man, or boy, who helped the weak and protected his village. Someone like that wouldn't have killed a man so brutally. Naruto sighed. He knew this was going to come up. "All I can tell you is that the man was guilty, and I only showed him the same courtesy he showed our men. He knew that when he decided to let himself be a monster, people would be wary of him, in one way or another. He had hoped that Anko wouldn't ask him about the IWA scum, but he knew her. She was a curious woman. How do you know he was guilty though?" she asked suddenly. All she had seen was the Hokage ask questions and receive no answers. There was no way he was able to get the answers just from being near the man, right? If not, then he had killed a man in the worst way there was. Even Ibiki had boundaries, and killing an unarmed and completely subdued man was something no one should be willing to do. They would do it if their Hokage ordered them to, but their leader never gave orders like that, not to them at least. I'm a censor, I know things. He could tell Anko didn't appreciate the half-truth of his reply. He was a censor, and he did know things about people because of it, but he didn't go into detail about it, which is what the woman wanted. I just don't know why someone like you, a hero, would do that to someone, she said. It really didn't make sense to her. He was the person to set an entire country free from its oppressor, and had, supposedly, asked for nothing but a healthy alliance between the two nations in return. Naruto gave the woman a sad smile, which shocked her a little. He then turned to the door and opened it. Before he walked out, he told her the most truthful thing he'd ever say to her. I've never claimed to be a hero. As he was walking out, she caught the last part of his sentence. What I am, is a monster. And with that, Naruto left the woman alone with her thoughts. And they were many. After his little chat with Anko, which he was a little confused with because they really didn't need to be in her bedroom for it, Naruto decided to make his way back to his new home. He had recently discovered something about his Sage Dust technique that, if he was able to harness it properly, would put him into a place in which the eye could not see. He was already years ahead of other shinobi when it came to destructive power, but with what he thought his newfound abilities might do when he ascertained them would send him even further. He needed power, not want, so that he could protect his people. The downside about it though was how difficult it was. He was able to learn everything he picked up with such ease and speed that he was a little unprepared to deal with the annoyance of patient learning. Even he couldn't understand what he was trying to accomplish, and that was infuriating. When he arrived, he went straight to his room, already aware that he was the only person in the apartment. He had briefly wondered if Yugao was still at the restaurant with the others and if she would be upset if he didn't return. She most likely wouldn't be. It was the being alone with Anko part that might make her angry. They hadn't done anything, but Naruto could feel Yugao's mind. She had thought that that was exactly what was going to happen when they left. Honestly, did his Nei-chan think he was some kind of man-whore? He had only been close with one woman his entire life, and she just happened to be older than him. Sure, there were other girls after Mei that fancied him as more than a friend, but he had never been close with any of them. His sister was a little overprotective when it came to females, and she really didn't have a need to be. He had turned down sex from a beautiful and powerful Kage for crying out loud. He thought she'd understand that he wasn't only interested in casual and meaningless pleasure. He decided to forget about his Nei-chan's mission to preserve his virginity, and bring his mind back to where it was supposed to be. His Sage Dust techniques were devastating when used offensively, which was why he liked them so much. But lately, he thought it was possible to do more than just kill with them. It was only speculation, but he had learned that he was capable of anything when he put his mind to it. And there was his conclusion that with every one of his unique gifts, there was a different way of using them. He knew he was missing something every time he used his Sannin abilities, and he had recently decided that it was time to look into it. Usually, he would be more than excited to develop new forms of senjutsu, but with the difficulty in which it was to even contemplate what he thought may be possible, was less than appealing. It was like the word you can't remember that's on the tip of your tongue, except in his case the word didn't exist yet, so his frustration was understandable. He had even resorted to asking his inner demon for a few pointers. That had turned out to be a waste of time. Even the great and powerful Kyubi no Kitsune was totally lost when it came to his complex and ridiculously exclusive innate talents. The powerful fox had lived for thousands of years and he had never heard of anyone, not even the Rikudo Sannin himself, who could manipulate natural energy with the same skill as the young Uzumaki. In theory, it should be impossible to add form to the world's chakra, it being the world's chakra and all. It was almost as absurd as adding form to another person's chakra while it was still inside them, which was as crazy as it sounded. Natural energy was exactly the same thing. People could take their opponent's chakra to use for themselves, but never add shape to it before even extracting it. It was not physically or theoretically possible, yet the ex-ANBU operative was doing just that. The little brat was doing the impossible again, which irritated and pleased the powerful chakra entity. The others didn't even bother to try and help him. Without some kind of guide, it was close to impossible to do what he was attempting, but that's what would make it all the more sweeter when he accomplished it. At the moment, though, it was the most annoying thing he had ever gone through. The best way he could describe what he thought about it was that he saw his sage dust techniques as a number line. When he called forth Bishamon, for example, he would go from 0 to +6. The positive side represented the destructive prowess. The negative side, however, was what he was trying to figure out. He had no idea how to go from 0 to a negative number, because he still didn't fully understand what the positive side represented. He had just been using the easier side the whole time because it was exactly that, easy. If he wasn't so annoyed, he would have seen the irony in it. He could understand others and their techniques with almost scary clarity, but when it came to his, he was confused beyond words. So here he was, sitting in a lotus position on the floor in the middle of his room, hoping that he'd strike a thought of brilliance that would solve his little problem. This was honestly the only method he had left, having tried everything else he could think of. It seemed that unlocking a new and potentially godly form of senjutsu wasn't as easy as learning elemental ninjutsu. Who would have known? He had thought that if he sat and poured every ounce of his concentration in it, he'd eventually figure the secret behind natural energy that he had yet to discover. It would be incredibly difficult, but he was determined to acquire it. It was important to him, even more so now that he was no longer in the ANBU. Becoming a Jonin meant that he would have to step up his game if he wanted to keep everyone safe. Other shinobi weren't all like ANBU agents. They didn't automatically know what to do in any and all situations. Jonin were a little easier to deal with because if they had gained the rank, then they did know what to do in most situations, and could, for the most part, take care of themselves. It was the Genin and Chunin that Naruto was worried about. Now that he was a regular Jonin, well, not exactly regular, he'd have to lead teams of the lower-ranked ninja of the village. That meant that he was responsible for teaching them the right way of doing something and keeping them alive. He had led multiple ANBU into suicide missions and came out unscathed, but that was with extremely well-trained men and women, not green shinobi. He considered Chunin green as well, the rank given to those who had little more experience than the low-ranking genin. It was harsh, but the truth nonetheless. In all honesty, Naruto was nervous. He had never lost a teammate, besides Itachi, who was taken from him, not lost, and didn't ever wish to. With non-ANBU shinobi, it would increase the likeliness of that fear. Finally, something the godchild was afraid of. Sighing in annoyance, he stood from his position on the floor, unable, again, to accomplish anything. He really disliked not being able to do something he wanted. Was this how everyone else felt? That thought actually brought a smile to his face. He had found something that made him normal, irritation due to his inability to complete a task. He was finally like regular people. Flawed. He stretched his back, receiving a grateful pop in return, and headed for the kitchen. He had been meditating for a good hour, and he still hadn't eaten anything. When he got to the living room, he felt a presence at the door. He hadn't thanked Hate for allowing him to live with the two of them for the time being yet. When the brown-haired Tokubetsu Jonin entered his apartment, he was greeted by his newest houseguest. "Hi, Hate-san," Naruto greeted politely. He had always showed the man respect for being so good to his sister. When he had first met the man, he had checked him thoroughly for any questionable intentions. When he found nothing but genuine love for the kunoichi, he was more than willing to give him a chance. Yugao really loved him as well, so he owed it to her to try and forge a friendship with her lover, which he had. Naruto and Hate were as close as a little brother could be with his older sister's boyfriend. Naruto-san, you're already back from your mission?" Hate asked. He had thought it would be a few more days until he got to see the blonde again. "I guess that means you know what Hokage-sama has ordered then," he said somewhat cautiously. He didn't want to accidentally tell the boy something that he didn't know yet, but him being in his apartment meant that he most likely knew already. "Yeah. I got back a few hours ago," the blonde replied. Hokage Jiji told me right when I returned. Let it be known that Sarutobi Hiruzen was not a procrastinator. Hate gave Naruto a small smile, followed by a cough as he joined him in the kitchen. I saw your entry in the bingo book. The things his girlfriend's surrogate little brother accomplished always amazed the ever-coughing shinobi. That was an awful lot of information, don't you think? He asked. Naruto clenched his fists. Yeah, too much, he replied. He knew that Hate was an intelligent man, so for him to think something was up wasn't much of a surprise to him. Does the Hokage think it was a traitor? He asked curiously, followed by another short cough. Naruto knew that he could speak with Hate a little more openly than others. He was a good and loyal Konohanin, and had the trust of his most precious person. It must be, the Uzumaki informed. Most of that information was classified as Hokage eyes only. The other half required a high level of clearance to attain. If it wasn't a traitor, then someone out there is a better spy than Jiraiya-sensei. Hate chuckled at that statement. There was no one better at what Jiraiya did except maybe Naruto himself. That had left only one conclusion. So yes, we have a traitor amongst us. Naruto was angry for being betrayed by a fellow Konohanin, but most of all he was hurt. He had spent the bulk of his young life fighting for his people. For one of them to do something like this brought pain to his heart. His people were his everything. Without them, he would be lost. Hate sighed. He noticed his soon-to-be brother-in-law's hurt and angry expression. It was not often that someone was able to see the real Naruto. He was usually a wise and powerful shinobi, but if you were someone he considered close, then you were privileged with getting to see underneath his monster persona. Hate took a second to feel honored that the Kamikage was comfortable enough with him to show him his other side. Enough with this traitor talk, the brown-haired man declared. Are you hungry? Naruto appreciated the change in topic, and opened his mouth to speak, but was cut off by the sound of his stomach growling. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck and looked sheepish. Yeah, I guess I am. The two shinobi were quiet for a moment before they burst into laughter. Even in difficult times, one could always find an escape in a friend. When Yugao got home that night, she was welcomed with the sight of her two favorite men eating dinner together, talking with one another like they were great friends, just the way she liked it. She decided she could wait and interrogate Naruto about what happened after he left Shushiya's with Anko later. Now was the time to relax and forget about all of their worries. Naruto was tired. After their family-like meal together, Yugao had taken Naruto into his room and proceeded to question him on his day's events after leaving with Anko. He had been a little annoyed but complied nonetheless. His Nei-chan was someone important to him, so if he had to deal with her overbearing protection of his innocence, which was the most absurd thing he had ever heard come from her mouth, seeing as it was too late in most meanings of the word, then he would. He was still very much a virgin, but innocent was the last thing he'd call himself. It had taken him an entire half-hour of explaining his slightly awkward conversation with the snake mistress, and then another 2 hours convincing the woman that he had in no way, shape, or form had any kind of intimate relations with her friend. He honestly began to think that it would be better if he actually did take up some of the women's offers to mess around with them if Yugao wouldn't believe him when he actually did nothing. It wouldn't be as annoying and he would at least get something out of it instead of suffering through the extended interrogations for doing nothing wrong. It wouldn't be wrong in the first place, but that was a moot point apparently. He had woken up after getting only a few hours of sleep and immediately dressed himself in his new Jonin gear. Gone was his A&B uniform, and in its place was a standard Konoha Jonin flak jacket over a long-sleeved black shirt, the right sleeve being completely burnt orange. He wore black shinobi pants and sandals, with a black-clothed Konoha Hitaiite. He was never able to wear his forehead protector much when he was a member of the zoo, which he had stopped calling the Corps years ago, and he was excited to start. Representing his village felt good. He was by no means awake, but at least it wasn't all bad. He had made it to the Hokage Tower, and started to make his way up the stairs to his Gigi's office. He was aware of all the surprised looks he had gotten while he walked from his home to the leader's place of command. Even the people in the tower looked at him strangely, which was weird for him since they acted like this was the first time he had entered the building, which as Naruto, it was. He could feel their minds clearly. Apparently word of Uzumaki Naruto being Nezumi the Kamikage had spread faster than he thought it would. It just reminded him of how annoyed he was at being betrayed. Naruto reached for the door but paused before he entered. He could feel the minds of the people inside. Hiruzen was annoyed, and a little upset. The majority of the others in the Hokage's office were not happy. Most of them had feelings of disgust. And some were even angry at Hiruzen himself. Naruto didn't like that at all. His Jiji was to be respected at all times. Failure to show that respect automatically made the sinner an enemy of the bringer of hope. He steeled himself and opened the door, causing all eyes to gravitate to him. If he was a lesser man, he would have been incredibly nervous. He just so happened to be the most powerful shinobi in Konoha, though, and right now he had the feeling that he needed to show it. The blonde walked right past the irritated crowd and stood to the right of Hiruzen, where he deserved to be. Hokage-sama, he greeted formally, deciding to show the others how one should properly treat the god of shinobi. He wanted the world to know that his Jiji was still a powerful Kage, and having the famous bringer of hope bow to him was a great way to show it. He never really enjoyed using his popularity all that much, but for his Hokage, he would do anything. There was never a task too difficult for him. When the Lord Third spoke, his words were absolute. Naruto-kun, Hiruzen began, making sure to express his thankfulness at the obvious show of loyalty and respect through his feelings. Just the person we were talking about. It was painfully clear that he was the discussion in the now very cramped room. He just didn't know what it was they were speaking about. I see, Naruto replied. And what would that be about? He asked. He had a feeling that this might happen, just not so soon. The minds of the ninja present told him all he needed to know. The Hokage lit his tobacco pipe before he answered. The accumulated Jonin do not believe you to be former ANBU operative Nezumi, and have expressed their feelings of you being incompetent. Naruto could feel his surrogate grandfather's amusement. Apparently the aged warrior felt it was just as funny as he did. Ah, I see, the blonde replied. Why is that? He directed his question to the shinobi instead of his leader. A random Jonin he knew to be named Kazuo was the first to express his concerns in a completely appropriate and adult-like manner. Because there's no way a brat like you could be the bringer of hope, that's why, demon boy. Like he said, completely professional. The man was extremely lucky that he was a loyal Konohanin, because if he wasn't, he would no longer take breath from this world. It was strange because most of the shinobi force knew that he was not the Kyuubi and didn't want to purposely treat him like garbage. To be among so many who felt he was nothing but a puppet for a supposed demon was a little disheartening. 1. I am the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, which is in my bingo book entry. Naruto began. 2. I matched the description of Nezumi perfectly. This really was a waste of his time. 3. Demon is not a suitable word to describe me, the correct term you're looking for is monster. He disliked ignorant people with all of his being. 4. Hatake Kakashi, a respected Jonin who's about to enter the room, can vouch that I am in fact who I say I am. Everyone decided to turn to the door, and sure enough, the aforementioned, silver-haired man walked through, late as usual, little orange book in hand. As he entered the room, he stopped before he made it to his favorite spot to look at everyone staring at him. Yo! He greeted coolly. It irritated most present that he barely lifted his eyes from his smut long enough to say the single word hello. The man was shameless. Hatake! Kazuo shouted, getting the attention of the famed Sharingan no Kakashi. Is this Uzumaki Naruto really the bringer of hope? He asked. It was clear that the man was not a fan of the blondes. Kurama most likely killed someone close to him 12 years ago. Still, the man was an idiot for blaming it on him. Kakashi gave the man an eye smile only he was capable of giving. Yup. Naruto-kun is Nezumi Kohai. Why'd you even have to ask? It was kind of pointless after all. The Hokage had said as much. That should have been enough. Do you doubt the Lord Hokage, Kazuo-san? He asked in a polite but somehow threatening way. Kakashi was right behind Naruto in being the most loyal shinobi in the village. I know, of course not. He tried to say quickly. It's just really hard to believe. Perhaps a demonstration is required, Hiruzen suggested. Naruto smirked. This sounded like fun. What did you have in mind, Hokage-sama? Uzumaki asked. He had hoped that his Jiji would give him the chance to prove himself in front of everyone. Without something mind-blowing to showcase his abilities, he would never be accepted as a Jonin of Konoha, Kamikage or not. His leader's mind pleased the boy. That would definitely suffice. A duel. Hiruzen began. 5 of my most powerful Jonin against you. The incredulous looks on their faces was very amusing. Their thoughts were equally as funny. They thought that was unfair. Ano, Hokage-sama. A kunoichi named Mitsu asked for permission to speak. Hiruzen gave it to her. That sounds a little unfair. Oh, the benefits of being underestimated. At least the woman wasn't some obnoxious ignorant fool with a QB vendetta. I'm glad you brought that up, Mitsu-chan. The Sandaime took another drag from his pipe. It would indeed be unfair. Here, he gave a smirk that made Naruto proud to be under his command. So, I have decided that Naruto-kun will take them on all at once. Their disbelief was palpable, blindfolded. What the hell was the Hokage thinking? And with both hands tied behind his back, he continued. That should make it a little fairer, don't you think, Naruto-kun? As you wish, Hokage-sama, he replied. Without all of the handicaps it would indeed be unfair, for the 5 Jonin. You can't be serious, Hokage-sama, Kazuo yelled, earning a death glare from Naruto. I am, and that is the end of it, he announced in his powerful Hokage voice. Naruto was always telling him that he needed to use it more so he could show the people who doubted his ability to lead that he was still the man who had protected Konoha for many, many years. The duel will begin in an hour at the stadium. With that said, the Hokage dismissed everyone, including Naruto, to get ready for Uzumaki Naruto's debut into the Jonin ranks. Hatake Kakashi, Mitarashi Enko, Mato Gai, Sarutobi Asuma, and Yuhi Kurenai stood side by side in Konoha's stadium, waiting for their opponent to arrive. They had all been summoned to the Hokage's office an hour ago. Hiruzen had explained to them what they were chosen to do, and most of them were a little less than eager to follow orders. Kakashi knew better than anyone how powerful Naruto was, and he wasn't going to underestimate him like he knew, at the very least, one of his comrades was going to do. Enko had never seen the boy in action, but she knew of his accomplishments. The only person strong enough to be the Hokage out of the 5 of them was Kakashi, and by the way he held himself, it looked like he was preparing to fight the 4th Shinobi World War, not a lone 15-year-old. She wasn't going to hold back if he wasn't. Guy was pumped and ready for anything. He doubted that one boy, even the bringer of hope, could defeat all 5 of them, but decided to test the boy's flames of youth. Asuma was a little irritated. He really didn't want to have to fight the Kamikage. Not because he was scared, but because he had better things to do. He and Kurenai had planned to spend the day together, and now that was ruined because his father. Kurenai was a little nervous. Naruto was one of the things Yugao talked about at Shushiya's after Enko had spirited him away. The ANBU woman confirmed that everything they'd ever heard about the Kamikage was true. He did have a power that surpassed even the 5 Kage. Now she had to fight him, and if she was totally honest, she had little desire to. So what are the handicaps Hokage-sama mentioned? Enko asked. The Lord Third had told Kakashi to explain the rules when they arrived at the stadium. They all apply to Naruto-kun, he revealed, somewhat shocking Guy and Asuma. The first is that we will be taking him on together, all at once. The look Guy gave him was priceless. Does he truly want us to kill the boy? The blue beast of Konoha asked. Even one at a time was far-fetched. He wants us to have a chance, he replied. The seriousness in his voice unnerved the taijutsu specialist. The second handicap is that he'll be blindfolded. Okay, that's just ridiculous, Asuma said. What the hell is my dad thinking? He knew his father was a wise man, even if he would never say it out loud, so he couldn't understand why he would do something so foolish. I've had a hand in training Naruto-kun, Kakashi began. So trust me when I say we need all the help the Lord Third is giving us. It was true. Kakashi was Naruto's first sensei when he joined the ANBU all those years ago. When he was Inu, he had witnessed a child do things no man should be able to accomplish, and he did it with ease. So Kakashi knew that, better than anyone else, they would most likely lose this fight. It was simple logic, really. 5 high-ranking Jonin versus 1 godlike monster. The monster would win every time. Naruto would win every time. It was something the perverted scarecrow was proud of his Kohai for. He never gave up and he never lost. Ever. He was Konoha's ace, and would one day change his lady for the better once he came to command her. And the third handicap? Kurenai asked, somewhat hesitantly. She could only imagine the ridiculousness of the next one. What, was he going to fight them with his hands tied behind his back? Both of his hands will be tied behind his back, Kakashi informed them. Kurenai wasn't the only one to pause for a moment to process the information they were just given. Was Hatake being serious? Taking on 5 powerful Jonin while blindfolded was already suicide, but doing it without his arms just spelled disaster. The Hokage must really be on a good one if he was okay with these conditions. Kakashi was the only one to know that it was the Hokage who made them. Anko was internally torn. She had always wanted to see the bringer of hope in action, and she was about to get the chance to see it right now. However, being one of the people to fight him was a little terrifying. It obviously wasn't going to end in any deaths, but even knowing that, she was still a little scared. Before anyone could say anything about what Kakashi had revealed, the blonde they were supposed to fight Shunshine body flickered into the stadium, his blindfold on and arms tied behind him. How he even managed to make his way to them like that surprised them. The Hokage soon followed, appearing in the Kage's box with Nico and Saru. It was time to address the people. Jonin and ANBU of Konoha, I welcome you to the Jonin test of one Uzumaki Naruto, the bringer of hope, and my shadow. It was still silent, but Naruto was able to feel all of the excitement in the air. The test is simple. He must fight 5 Jonin at once while blindfolded, and without the use of his arms. At this, the Jonin gathered broke into chatter amongst one another. Hiruzen continued. If Uzumaki Naruto wins, he will be an official Jonin of Konohagakure no Sato. If he loses, he will be made a genin. The Hokage took his seat. You may begin. Kazuo took this time to put the blonde down. Everyone that has shown up has come to watch real Jonin fight. He started. But it doesn't look like anyone showed up to support you. The man had no idea who he was talking to. It was time to show him who he was. My supporters are just a little more secretive, is all, Naruto said with a smirk on his face. He felt the man's confusion, so he decided to show him instead of explaining it. Comrades! He shouted. Make yourselves known! With that one order, the hundreds of ANBU who had spread throughout the stadium exited the shadows, covering most of the giant arena's inside walls. Kazuo's eyes widened and the shock he felt was easy to spot. Well, what the hell? The Jonin stuttered out. There was more ANBU present at this moment than anyone had ever seen congregate in one spot ever. Naruto stared right into Kazuo's eyes from beneath the blindfold as he next spoke. ANBU, who are you here to see? There was a moment of silence before the entirety of the gathered zoo, including Nico and Saru, answered as one. Nezumi Taicho. The stadium echoed with the voices of the Black Ops. Who am I? The blonde asked, never taking his covered eyes off the rude and soon-to-be embarrassed Jonin. Nezumi Taicho. Once again, all of the ANBU spoke as a single unit. Naruto gave a monstrous smile. Who's going to win? Nezumi Taicho. This was shouted louder than the first two. When Kakashi raised his Hatae to reveal his Sharingan, Guy, Asuma, Anko, and Kurenai developed ready stances. Naruto almost jumped for joy. It was time to step out of the shadows. Let's get wild. Danzo had heard about the duel between Uzumaki Naruto, the Kamikage, against 5 Jonin who were powerful in their own right. Be it taijutsu, ninjutsu, genjutsu, or a mixture of all three, each of the Jonin the boy was about to fight were considered specialists. He had arrived minutes before it started, taking a seat in the Kage box with his old friend and leader. Willingly putting himself so close to Naruto was a mistake. The Uzumaki could now feel the man's mind. He had found his traitor. It momentarily angered him that he couldn't do anything about it yet, since he had already decided to have Sasuke help destroy the man who took someone, or in Sasuke's case everyone, away from them. Danzo really made a terrible call going against the Hokage with the Uchiha affair. He and Naruto were a lot alike, they could have benefited from each other. That was impossible now, though. He had already incurred the wrath of God and his warrior angel. Naruto shook the thoughts of the crippled man from his mind. It was time to show Konoha there was a new top dog amongst the Jonin. Kakashi wasted no time in going for the kill shot. The moment the Hokage had told them to start, he had went through the required hand seals to create his one original technique. The sound of thousands of chirping birds rang out in the stadium. Guy had been disappointed in his longtime rival when he saw the assassination technique come to life. This was a duel against a fellow Konoha shinobi, and a child at that. For Kakashi to be willing to use that much force caused the green-clad Jonin to pause. His first mistake. Naruto smirked. It was time to show his temporary enemies it was bad for their health to hold back. With speed that put Guy to shame, Naruto's foot dug into the spandex-wearing man's stomach, blasting him into the arena wall. 1. Before he had even dropped to the ground, Kakashi had raced after his Kohai, aiming his powerful technique at his head. He was met by nothing but air. A scream from Kakashi's right caused him to turn his head, getting a glimpse at Kurenai receiving a knee to the side. The woman had tried to cast at least 3 sound-induced genjutsu, but for reasons unknown to her, the boy seemed to be immune. The crashing sound signaled the loss of Kurenai from the battle. 2. Alright, soldier boy, let's see you dodge this. Anko yelled, already foregoing her nervousness for the thrill of a good fight. She brought her right arm up, calling forth one of her special skill sets. Sanaijushu, hidden shadow snake hands. From her coat shot the snakes she got her moniker from. The hissing creatures raced at the blonde with commendable speeds. It might have actually worked too, if he wasn't one of the fastest shinobi in the elemental nations. He hadn't tested his speed against the infamously fast Raikage, but he was almost certain that the bulky man could not match his pace. Vanishing from sight, Anko heard Asuma yell, "Above you!" The boy's leg was positioned to slam a powerful axe kick into the snake user, but had to abandon that tactic when his Gigi's son shot a fireball at him. Katon, Gokaki no Jutsu, fire release, great fireball technique. Asuma yelled before he sent the powerful jutsu at his opponent. He was really close in taking out Anko there, and they apparently needed all the manpower they had left. The kid was blindfolded and practically harmless. What the hell was happening here? The moment the flames stopped leaving his mouth, Naruto was out of sight again. All he heard was Anko shouting, "Behind you!" before being slammed into a wall, courtesy of Naruto's foot. 3. Suddenly, the ground lit up in flames when Kakashi called his next jutsu forth. Katon Hibashiri, fire release, running fire. Fire encircled the boy, trapping him within its confines. Anko took the opportunity to throw 3 kunai down on the boy, each having ninja wire attached to them. Snake, dragon, rabbit, tiger. Katon, Ryuka no Jutsu, fire release, dragon fire technique. The ninja wire was alit with chakra-laced fire, shooting at the blonde inside the circle of flame. That's when Kakashi remembered his Kohai's incredible control over a particular jutsu. "Wait! It's a Kage Bunshin!" he yelled, but the smirk on Naruto's face declared it was too late. The XNBU mouth boomed before the explosive clone detonated, pushing Anko and Kakashi backwards. It didn't do anything but bruise the 2 Jonin, but it still hurt. "What the hell do you mean? His hands are tied behind his back, he can't create Bunshin," Anko yelled accusingly. "Naruto has ridiculously advanced control over Bunshin," Kakashi admitted. "He no longer requires hand seals, he just wills them into existence." The very thought made Anko's head spin. To be able to use any technique without the help of hand seals was unheard of, unless they didn't require any in the first place. They help mold the physical and spiritual energies from within, bringing the jutsu to life in the world. In the small moment it took her to think about Naruto's prowess, the boy himself had Shunshine body flickered behind her, kicking her in the back just hard enough to incapacitate her and not do any serious damage. 4. Before he could focus his attention on his former sensei, Naruto had to bend backwards, missing the dynamic entry aimed at his head by centimeters. Mato Guy was almost as powerful as Kakashi. It would take more than a single kick to take him out of the game. Naruto had hoped for that to be true. How can he see our moves, Kakashi? Guy asked, fully serious now that it was only him and his rival left. The unnerving thing about it all was the fact that the boy hadn't even broken a sweat. He's the greatest censor ever born, Kakashi answered quickly from his position. Even without his eyes, he sees more than we do. Jiraiya had said that one's threat perception increased once in Sage mode, but what his godson was doing, once again, took it into a whole other league. He was capable of seeing the world without the need of sight, and had even said he could see better that way. What should we do? He was now willing to up his game. Bring everything you've got down on him, the copy Nin replied. We won't even come close to killing him, but we might be able to lose with some dignity. Shinobi 101, if you're going down, take as many bastards as you can with you. Guy nodded. If Kakashi was positive that they wouldn't hurt him, then there was no need to hold back. Naruto felt several increases in his senpai's rival, announcing that he was opening the 8 gates within him. Mato Guy was extremely unconventional and could come off as somewhat slow in the head, but he wasn't given the title of Jonin for his upbeat attitude and everything youthful. He and Hiruzen knew that Guy was the greatest taijutsu master in the nation. The Hokage had compared him to only one other person, the Raikage. Kumo's leader used chakra flow to create an in-taijutsu, so he was considered more powerful. Kaimon Kai Gate of Opening. Naruto always found it interesting when someone opened the inner gates. He could feel the person's chakra flood their tenketsu, no longer being held back by the human body's limiters. Kumon Kai Gate of Healing. The man might just be smarter than he looks. Simon Kai Gate of Life. Naruto was getting excited now. Shomon Kai Gate of Pain. With that last limiter opened, the green spandex-clad man was officially a few shades redder than any normal person should be. Not that Naruto could actually see it, and his presence was the second largest on the field now. So you opened a few of the Hashiman 8 gates, have you? Guy was silent, just waiting for the perfect opportunity to begin his assault. Let's play then. What are you waiting for? Naruto knew exactly what he was waiting for. Kakashi may have suppressed his chakra to the absolute minuscule amount it could go, but nothing was ever too small for him not to notice. Guy shot off from his spot in the field with speeds most people couldn't keep up with, intent on driving a powerful fist into the boy's head. His fist got so close he felt the blonde's breath. When he thought he had him, Naruto jumped into the air, allowing Kakashi to drive his Raikiri at him. Guy had planned on it missing and was positioned so that he could jump at the boy to meet his rival for a combination attack. Naruto was impressed. Their teamwork was amazing. When no words needed to be spoken, that meant the team was truly powerful. There were a few ways how he could handle this seemingly inescapable position, but decided to give one of his newer, more amusing skills a go. He had been given a Hyuga who didn't have a stick up her ass for Team Ro a year ago, and after they became friends, Uma had taught him the Hyuga way of projecting chakra from various places. After a few hours messing around with the idea, he had come up with one of the coolest things he'd ever created. An enhanced fist from Guy and a lightning cutter from Kakashi were seconds away from impaling the boy when he opened his mouth. Kakashi's Sharingan picked up the small details the rest of the world overlooked, and was able to see his Kohai's tongue touching the roof of his mouth. Great, he was going to take the win and their dignity from them with this one. Naruto clicked his tongue. The pent-up natural energy he forced their exploding, causing a powerful blast that sent the 2 Jonin flying into the walls of the stadium, officially ending the duel. 5. Naruto had, for the past 3 years, been creating strange and new ways to use his powers. Many shinobi were forced to retire when they lost a limb, and the blonde wanted to have a backup plan just in case he was crippled. Now, 3 years later, Naruto could kill a man in so many unique and unheard of ways that it was almost freaky. The blast of natural energy from his tongue just now was on a scaled-down level. Used at full strength, it had the ability to both repel attacks and cripple multiple targets, indefinitely. It was his answer to the Hyuga main branch's Hakusho Kaiten, 8 trigrams palms revolving heaven. Uma was impressed when he showed her the technique, and a little envious that he was able to create a better version of the Hyuga's self-proclaimed ultimate defense in only a few hours, when it took her 3 months to learn the original. The Jonin who had showed up to watch stayed silent, unable to understand what they had just seen. The Uzumaki had taken out 5 of Konoha's most famous Jonin, and he did it severely handicapped. The legend of the Kamikage was no longer just a myth. It was a little scary that he was just as the stories said, invincible, or so it seemed. The ANBU stayed silent as well, but not because they were shocked, but because they knew the outcome before the test even started. ANBU had undying loyalty and respect for their former captain, and even though he was no longer with the Corps, he'd always be able to command them, just like with Ina Taicho. They were the greatest ANBU operatives ever, and they would be shown the proper respect by all ANBU, future and past. Once an ANBU, always an ANBU, and Naruto could feel this in them. The entire Black Ops division was forever and always his family. His bindings were cast aside, and the blindfold taken off. He took in a deep breath before he began. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. The men and women paid close attention. I've been called the bringer of hope, the Kamikage, a hero, here he smirked, a monster. Some of the shinobi gave a dry chuckle at that one. But there is no reason to treat me like a demon. I have full control of my Bija. It is no longer a threat to Konoha. I know many of you lost loved ones to the Kyuubi, but instead of trying to take your emotional anguish out on me, you all should be helping me use the creature to help Konoha. He knew that the Bijuu were misunderstood, and because of that, were imprisoned, but he needed to play off the emotions of the crowd. Revealing he had made the Kyuubi no Kitsune his friend would be counterproductive. I serve the Hokage. I've defended our village from the shadows for 8 years. The blonde continued. I would happily die for our home, as I know all of you would. He could feel the people begin to accept his words. I will be the first to admit that I am a monster. He brought his arms in the air to emphasize his surroundings. But I am Konoha's monster. The people actually like that idea. I am a warrior of our God, and I protect our village, our heaven, with all the strength I have. He smirked again. And I'm incredibly strong, so for as long as I still breathe, Konoha will never fall. His fellow shinobi cheered loudly, the boy's words striking a chord with them. They had initially been reluctant about accepting the village pariah into their ranks, but after seeing a small glimpse of his ability, coupled with his genuine want to protect Konoha and her people, most of them were more than satisfied with the idea. A personal monster to let loose on any enemy that was foolish enough to attack sounded spectacular. The boy was a patriot, just like everyone else. I stand before you all today, giving you my word. Naruto began. I will be your monster. That had done it. He was now officially a part of the Jonin ranks. Risking a glance at Kazuo, he was thrilled that the man sighed in defeat, smirked, and then nodded his approval. Naruto had convinced him that he, at the very least, deserved a chance. The Lord Third smiled, his Hokage hat tipped so that his face was hidden from view. He knew his shadow could do it. He had earned his Jonin status. That's it for part 3. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.